rice sector is well known for hitting big-digit numbers when it comes to revenues earned from export. And these numbers continue to climb from year to year as the industry continues to improve. To give you an idea of the export earnings of the sector for last year, here is General Manager for the GRDB, Nizam Hassan.
The sector did well in 2019. The export was 526,617 tons, valued at $222.7 million US. With regards to how we are and how we have fared so far for 2020, at the end of September, we were 377,000 tons exported with an export value of $160 million US. Our projections are that we will reach as much as 550,000 tons in exports with a value of over $230 million US.
That means we'll easily be exporting even more paddy, rice, and rice byproducts than last year. But how exactly do we manage to process that much rice for export? That's where the hardworking staff of the GRDB comes in. Today, we'll be looking at the journey paddy takes from its intake at the mill all the way up until it's loaded on a vessel and shipped away. The Guyana Rice Development Board's Quality Control Department is responsible for and has officers all along the export chain, up until the paddy is shipped off. To better understand their functions, we turn to Deputy General Manager of the GRDB, Ms. Allison Peters.
The Quality Control Department is one of several departments of the Guyana Rice Development Board. This department was formerly the National Paddy and Rice Grading Center. But in the year 1995, when the Guyana Rice Development Board was formed, it became a department of the board. This board has its mandate according to law in the Act number 15 of 1994, which describes through regulations and the Rice Factories Act how the department must operate. One of our main functions is basically the certification of exports. And this includes inspection, sampling, certification of the product, and the fumigation. In order to do that, the department has 5 departments, and they're all supervised by regional supervisors who conduct the same quality services in those regions. It is headed by a quality control manager, and she will take you through the paces of how things are done in the department, some of its services, how we test rice, the certification, etc. So now I will leave you in the capable hands of the quality control manager, Ms. Owenkirk.
My name is Ms. Marsha Owenkirk. I am the quality control manager of the Guyana Rice Development Board. As part of the responsibility alluded by the Deputy General Manager, Ms. Allison Peters, who alluded to the fact that certification is the main responsibility of the Quality Control Department. However, there are other services offered by the department. These include the licensing of mills, and this is done annually, training of persons within the rice industry, and we are mandated to train persons to grade paddy and rice within the industry, maintenance of technical standards with regards to grading paddy and rice. With regards to training of persons within the rice industry, this is done annually through a training program. Once participants are successful at the training programs, they are being monitored by the respective regional supervisors within the various regions. Once they're deemed competent to grade at a mill, they're being issued with a license to operate at the mill. The duration of this license is for 2 years. These license graders are then employed by millers who usually grade farmers' paddy, and they also certify rice at the miller's facility.
And that is a crucial step in the export process. If your rice isn't graded and certified by a licensed grader, good luck getting it out of the country. Now that we understand the functions of the Quality Control Department, let's head over to Region 3, where we will check with the Regional Superintendent Dasrat Narain, who is at the mill observing the paddy intake process right now.
Today we are going to talk about a very important topic, which is paddy intake. Intake normally happens after harvesting of the farmer's produce from the field. So when the farmer comes to the mill with his product, he will indicate to the miller that he has paddy for sale, after which the miller will make a booking. He will book the tractor number, the trailer number, or if it comes in a truck, he will book the truck number. After which, they will proceed to sampling, which is the fourth step of intake. So the miller would send his representative with a paddy trier to do sampling. So they would sample 5 points in the trailer, or if it's a truck, and then they will take that sample to the lab. So that is called a bulk sample. So when they take the sample to the lab, they would break down the sample because they have to do a number of analysis. Basically, it's 3 analysis. The first one is the dockage. So they will do the dockage. There is a process. They have a dockage machine, or you could do it manually. So after you determine the dockage, they will then do the moisture. And of course, the moisture has been done on clean paddy. Then they would use part of that sample to do the analysis of the produce. So basically it tells you the quality of produce that the farmer will be supplying to the mill, and payments will be made based on that.
Now that our farmers have successfully sold their paddy to the mills, the miller now begins to process the rice for packaging and export. At this point, the rice can be processed either of 2 ways: into white rice or into parboiled rice, or what we normally call brown rice. We now turn to the Quality Control Department's Regional Supervisor for Region 5, Wanella LaRose, who will give us a bit more insight into the processing of paddy into white rice.
After the paddy would have been shelled, the husk would be removed by a suction and transported to a dump site outside of the milling plant. The cargo rice that would be produced from the shelling would then be sortex. In the case of this mill where we're located, the sortex, the polishing goes through 3 stages. The first one, removing a percentage of the bran, then there's a second polish, and then there's lastly a water polish. After that, the rice would then be sortex, where it would then be taken to a sifter or grader where they would remove a percentage of the broken. This broken, along with the whole grain that would have been removed, would be stockpiled in ton sack awaiting export. When there is a request by the mill to the Quality Control Department for export of their product, we would come, and then this rice that is stored in ton sack would then be transported to a weighing bin, and packaging would be done based on the request from the mill. When the request would be made to the department, a GRDD staff would be summoned to the mill to take samples of the rice requested to be loaded. This rice would be sampled using a trial. After the completion of the sample, the rice would then be taken to the laboratory where it would be analyzed based on a contract that would have been in place between the miller and the buyer. After the analysis of this rice, a grade certificate would then be issued. This rice would then be loaded onto trucks and transshipped to Georgetown, where it would be stuffed into containers for export.
Meanwhile, over at the parboiling facility in Region 6, Regional Superintendent Mr. Fabian Joseph is waiting to tell us more about that process.
Today we are in the region and we will be looking at parboiling. I am at a modern parboiling facility, and also there is a traditional parboiling facility.
Before processing can even begin, Fabian and his team first check the certification of the rice, after which it is soaked, steamed, dried, and then processed.
It is then certified by a GRDB officer and then packaged into a truck to head to Georgetown.
And all these trucks of rice head down to the container terminal where Regional Supervisor for Region 4, Shamika Reese, takes over.
So basically what we do when it comes to inspection, sampling, and fumigation of containers, the first process is actually acquiring it's first to acquire the request. A request comes in, that request is prepared by the exporter representative. When that comes in, I would usually receives it I would usually receive it via email or in person. I would verify that request, and the verification process is where you would ensure that there's a contract for loading, and also we have the pre-inspected list of containers. The staff will then be assigned to that exporter or the location requested, and that's where we start to inspect the containers. Whenever the containers are there, the staff would first record the container number, then they will enter and start to inspect the interior of the container. We would ensure that the vents are sealed, there are no residue from previous cargo, and we have a checklist that we work with, and that checklist we would usually tick based on that checklist. If the container is okay, we ensure that we check the seal number, the rubbers on the container to ensure that it's sealed, the container can seal properly. When that is done, then we tick off and we approve that container for loading. Now we move on to sampling of rice. When the trucks come, because we usually sample from trucks. When the trucks come, the rice usually comes on trucks. When the trucks come, we ensure that the rice comes with a certificate, and they proceed to pack into the container. When they pack, as they pack, the staff will take a sample using a sample pan, and that pan they will check the sample, take the sample with the probe, check it in the pan, ensure that do a visual assessment to ensure that the quality seems to be what we're looking for, and then they will throw that into their sample bag for transport. When that is done, when the container is finished loading, then we go to the fumigation process. The fumigation is done. We use paper bags to do fumigation of containers or sleeves. When we have that, the dimension of the container, we also study that to know the space, because the fumigation is done based on a space treatment. So as long as we acquire that, then you go ahead to do the fumigation. And point to note that the fumigation is done in the presence of the exporter representative and an NPPO officer. So when that fumigation is done, and just bear in mind, fumigation is a space treatment. So when that staff rests the sack there and the container is closed, the gas would activate and move through the spaces of that container to get the entire volume of that container treated. When that container is finished fumigating, we would then close the container and have it sealed using a line seal, which is done by the exporter representative, and the GRA will also come whenever that time is to seal, to do the final sealing. We also place our sticker, fumigation sticker, that's a warning to tell how long the container will have to be on the fumigation for. We put the date and the time that container was fumigated.
Those containers are transported to the wharf where they are loaded into vessels for shipment. Let's suit up and head over to Shamika.
We're here at one of the city wharves in Georgetown to do our inspection, sampling and loading and fumigation of vessels. My name is Shamika Reese, and I'm the regional supervisor currently supervising the work here today. So I'm going to take you through what we actually do. Okay, a vessel, we have a vessel here. It's here for 15,000 metric tons of paddy and cargo rice going to Portugal. So first we have to do inspection of this vessel. Why we do inspection to ensure that this vessel or the hatches of this vessel is suitable for loading of the cargo. We ensure that no previous residue is there. The hatch can tightly close so that no water can get into when it's ready to leave. And upon completion of inspection, whenever we see the vessel reach all the criteria for loading, we would pass the vessel, writing up and issuing our certificate of readiness, declaring that the vessel is ready to load. When this is done, the vessel will commence loading, And as it's loaded, the staff will take their sample to ensure where the quality would, where we would issue a certificate, a quality certificate for the shipment of rice. Upon completion of loading, we will then do our fumigation process. With this process, the tablets or the type of fumigant we use is mainly aluminum phosphide, and we would usually, to do the fumigation, we would usually have to ensure that we get the dimension or the capacity of each of these hatches, so we can say how many tablets or how much of this fumigant is recommended to do the fumigation. Upon completion of fumigation, we will then place our stickers stating the exposure time after fumigation, which is 5 days or 120 hours.
And just like that, the rice is on its way. Now, throughout this entire process, we would have seen the GRDB officers taking samples of the rice to be exported at various junctures. And where does that rice go? Straight to the Quality Control Lab at the Agriculture Complex at LBI. Research Assistant Ms. Althea Melville awaits us to take us through the process that occurs here.
When the sample arrives to the laboratory, it's usually logged in a sample receiving log at the sample reception area, where it's being transferred from the paper bag to an airtight container. A label with the exporter's information, the commodity, and where it's been sampled, along with the destination, is placed on the bottle. The regional supervisor is responsible for reviewing the information on the bottle, and after that is done, the sample is being transferred to the storage area. It's stored under environmental conditions for 24 to 3 months, where it awaits a request from the marketing department in the form of a bill of lading. When that bill of lading arrives, the research assistant usually goes to the storage area, retrieve the sample based on the information seen on the bill of lading. The sample is then given a code and it's returned to the lab for analysis. Sample arrives to the lab from the coding area. It's been assigned to a staff. The grading process starts with moisture determination, where a moisture meter is used to determine the moisture of the sample. The moisture meter has a bias or a correction factor, which is usually applied after the moisture is being determined. The sample is passed through the boring divider 3 times for homogeneity, where it's then moved to the scale and broken further down into 235 grams. The sample is then moved to a workstation where the grading officer then calculates the grain length using 100 grains that are placed on 5 lines. A caliper is used to determine the grain length. The calculation of the grain length is being used to determine the percentage broken that is in the sample. After the broken is being removed, the factors are then being determined using the whole grains of the sample. When all of the factors are removed, it's usually transferred to the scale, where the staff would then check the weight of each factor and determine the percentage from 35 grams. This information is recorded in the grading book of that staff, and then it's transferred to a certificate, which is then handed over to the research assistant for reviewing.
And there you have it, from the mill all the way to the vessel where our nation's rice is shipped off around the world. The rice sector continues to rake in millions of dollars in revenue, all thanks to the hard work of our farmers who receive unending support from the Guyana Rice Development Board.